this trade, let's get into it. It was ultimately a 4-team trade. Angel City, Portland Thorns, Gotham FC, Orlando Pride, all the teams involved in this trade, and a combination of allocation money, draft picks, a player, were all involved in the movement. It started with a series of steps. Trade took place between Angel City and Portland Thorns. Portland acquiring Angel City's number 5 pick in the 2023 NWSL Draft and second round pick in the 2024 Draft in exchange for midfielder Yasmine Ryan and $20,000 in allocation money. And then Angel City then made a trade with Gotham FC, $250,000 in allocation money to Gotham in exchange for Gotham FC's number 1 pick. And then Gotham went ahead and sent $350,000 in allocation money and their 2024 fourth round pick to Orlando Pride in exchange for the Pride's 2023 second pick overall in the 2023 draft, and additional contingencies perhaps around some of these trades, because the reporting around these trades before Angel City made their official announcements, the LA Times reporting that part of Angel City's ambition to get this number 1 draft pick is with intent to ultimately select Alyssa Thompson, who we spoke about a little bit earlier in this episode, in the previous episode, in our wish list episode for the United States Women's National Team roster drop. But yeah, the 18-year-old high school senior, first ever high schooler to sign an NIL deal with Nike, and had previously verbally committed to Stanford, and is actually currently not registered for the 2023 NWSL Draft. So I think there's some question marks, and I think folks wondering if perhaps this is a trade that was done with contingencies in place, which is why the official trade is for the player rights to Yasmine Ryan. So I think the intent is for Angel City is to have Thompson register and declare for the draft, and then be able to select her number 1 overall. And if she, for whatever reason, does not make that decision to go pro, will we actually see Yasmine Ryan play with Gotham? I don't know. I think this is the next step, I think, for us to take a look at here.
I can't help but laugh because this trade, I mean, even listening to you
You're like, it's
verbalize
bananas.
out, it is bananas. It is bananas. 4 teams involved: Portland Thorns, Angel City, Gotham FC, Orlando Pride. So many moving parts, and it all broke within the matter of minutes, essentially at the exact same time. And then as these teams put out their statements in reaction to all these trades, it's clear that Angel City had this in the works for a while. They knew what they wanted. They wanted the number 1 overall draft pick in the 2023 NWSL Draft. They knew that Gotham held that spot. Even a couple hours ago, Sandra, you and I talking about the draft order and how 7 days out from the draft, it's going to change a number of times. And already we've got one of the biggest changes, because now Angel City is sitting pretty at the top of the draft order, number 1 in the first round. And as you mentioned, Angel City reportedly has their eyes on Alyssa Thompson, the 18-year-old that has an incredibly prolific career ahead of her. She broke her way into the senior women's national team most recently in November when U.S. played against Germany in a pair of friendlies. But this is a player that's been competing with players much older than her essentially the entire time she's been playing soccer. At the age of 13, she was already playing with players 4 years older than her. Most recently, she's at 17 years old. She was with the U19 boys team in the MLS Next League, the only female player in the league playing with boys, and they're a couple years older than her. This is a player that's ready for the NWSL. And now with the new draft rules in place in the league saying that 18-year-olds can enter the draft, just with little asterisks next to that, giving them a little bit of details about how they have to do that, how the contract needs to happen. But this is a player that I think is ready to make her move into the next level in the NWSL, play professionally. But the biggest bombshell, she's not registered yet. And the league released their newest registration list today, between our first episode and our second episode, they released that next wave of players that have been registered, and Alyssa Thompson's name's still not on it. So that's the next piece of news I'm waiting to happen. When will Alyssa Thompson register? When will her name be released? Because I think if Angel City does get a forward like Alyssa Thompson, it could be incredible for the future of Angel City, right? And maybe not this year specifically. I mean, I think she'll make an impact, but how she grows with 1 year under her belt, 2 years under her belt, especially at a club like Angel City that's putting such a commitment on its players, on its front office, on its staff, on its commitment to professionalism and leadership in the league. But we have to talk about the trickle down of all of this trade that happened, because ultimately Orlando Pride ends up with a hefty sum of money at the end of it, $350,000 from Gotham in exchange for a draft pick. But now Orlando's got some allocation money. They've got some money to deal with and play with. There's a lot of rumors right now that that Orlando wants Debinha, former North Carolina midfielder, Brazilian international. What do you think is going to happen with Orlando?
I mean, that's a hefty chunk of money to sort of yield back in all of this trade, and to get that kind of money and sort of be the final team, I guess, perhaps in play with all of these moves. It just sort of feels like, if we're looking at things in certain steps and how relating that to the draft order, like how things have shifted around a bit. So Gotham previously having the number 1 pick, but now it's likely that belongs to Angel City, and Orlando with both the number 2 and the number 3 pick. And obviously we're open to hearing some offers if other teams were interested in, making moves for those type of selections. So I'm curious as to how this is going to shake out, not so much in the allocation money sense, but what that's going to mean for selections in those top 3 picks. Because right as we hopped off of our live episode this morning, that draft registration list got updated again around noon Eastern or so. And we saw Michelle Duke, sophomore, on that registration list, and Michelle Cooper. And she is a player that is rated very, very highly, someone that I think teams are going to automatically target on their big draft boards. I think if you have one of those 3 picks, 3 to 5 picks in this first round, that you are absolutely looking at a player like Michelle Cooper.
So Michelle Cooper, for those that don't know, out of Duke, a sophomore member of the U.S. U20 youth national team that went to the World Cup this summer. An incredible goal incredible player at the international level, and at Duke just made incredible impact at that school.
So I'm curious if if when you're making all these phone calls, when you're having the email chains or the text group messages, or making the negotiations, how does that match with Orlando's draft board? What is the bigger target for them? Are they really swinging for the fences here, and they've laid the groundwork to possibly make a really good pitch to somebody like Debinha, and are content with making a selection in this 2023 draft as high as number 3? Perhaps they are. And maybe after all those phone calls, and sort of recognizing that Angel City wants to hopefully go with a player like Alyssa Thompson, and Gotham possibly is targeting somebody like a Michelle Cooper with that very desirable number 2 spot. Does that mean Orlando Pride are content with maybe looking elsewhere for at the different prospects in line for this draft, in light of possibly being a key player in the Debinha sweepstakes? Right, I'm not too sure. I mean, there's been a lot. I think there's been a lot of teams that have been tossed around. She was tied to Arsenal at one point. I mean, Chelsea now has a lot of money themselves after making a big deal with Beth England and Tottenham. And so, I mean, listen, I think there's happens to be a good chunk of money out there on both sides of the pond. And I think that really just depends on what a player like Debinha is looking for, where she wants to go. But I think
Yeah.
for both you and I, when this trade dropped and we saw that really big chunk of money, where we were curious as to where it would go. Or I mean, if that doesn't necessarily mean that chunk of money could go towards um one player signing. I mean, they recently
It
the
could
Pride recently
yeah.
announced that Martha re-signed with them as well. She was another free agent that they wanted to make sure stood with the Pride, and allocation money was utilized as part of
Yeah.
that process. So I mean, we'll see. We won't know until we know, right? The funny thing about this is it's like it almost sort of feels like you got to have that one trade that really sort of kicks off the kind of draft week madness, and perhaps this is that trade, and we might continue to see some additional things, some more shoes fall drop off their feet along the way.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if anything, Debinha is in the greatest position right now. I just hope that her agents and she are making really good negotiations because, as you mentioned, Chelsea's got some money, Tottenham's got some money to play with. These are all clubs, Arsenal, that want her. And now, if Orlando really does want her and they can make a case for her, and this $350,000 coming in can help push that over the edge, like that's fantastic. I mean, Debinha is sitting pretty at this point, right? She has owned this free agency like no other player in this league because she's been in the conversation. She's been in the headlines since day one as the biggest free agency player on this list. As there were other giant free agents, but a lot of them made moves and made trades early on. And Debinha has said that she's not returning to North Carolina, but she hasn't announced where she's going yet. And this is a moment where she can just really pick and choose exactly what she wants. And that's the beauty of free agency. I'm going to be honest. It really is. But just imagine for 1 second, Sandra, if Orlando does get Debinha, and now Orlando under Seb Hines, who we saw what he could do last year with just a few games with this Orlando side. Now he's got Marta back, signed to a 2-year contract, and you add Debinha into that midfield. Holy cow. Think of that. Marta and Debinha playing for a club on the same team in the NWSL.
I mean, it'll change some things, it'll change some things dramatically, I think.
Catch me wearing some purple next year.
It'll change some things dramatically, for that's for sure. But I think, we can ask similar questions of players involved in this trade, uh, for other teams. I mean, Angel City spending the money essentially spending like over $400,000 in allocation money to ensure that they are in that number one spot, in a prime position to select Alyssa Thompson again if she does um, register and declare herself eligible for the draft. How does this player fit into Angel City? How is Freya Kuhn going to utilize this player? What does that mean? What does that look like? Yasmine Ryan for the Thorns. My goodness, this was a player that we couldn't stop talking about.
Yeah.
Once the 2022 regular season hit that second half window, we could not stop talking about Yasmine Ryan. I mean, what she was doing and how she was producing for Portland Thorns FC. I mean, my goodness, all the way to a start in the NWSL Championship final. Absolute breakout type of year for this player, and to potentially now be with Gotham.
Mm-hmm.
As we're starting to see some of the new show. We've seen releases now from Angel City. We've seen releases from Gotham FC. I think that's a pretty good indicator that things are going to actually pan out the way they have been reported already. But Gotham and Angel City talking about how Yasmine Ryan is going to be in Jersey. I think that's a huge piece, and that's a huge get for Gotham.
That is a massive get for Gotham to get midfielder Yasmine Ryan. This is a player that was drafted in 2021 and had like an okay season in Portland in 2021. Didn't get the minutes that she deserved. solely because she was sitting behind so many great midfielders in front of her. But then when there were times where she got minutes and she was able to prove herself, we saw that in 2021. We saw glimpses of Ryan being able to do that with the Thorns. Then in 2022, as you mentioned, halfway through the season, it became the Yasmine Ryan show, and they couldn't take her off the field. And that is how players develop. That's how they come to take over starting spots, because you can only play 11 on a field. And if someone's doing great, are they actually outperforming someone on the pitch? And we saw Yasmine Ryan outperform other players at Portland and work her way up with Portland, get that starting role, and then work her way to a team like Gotham. And when you look at this Gotham side, what they struggled to do last year, they broke down a lot. They had a lot of missing pieces on that team, despite having good, talented players. Now they've got new coaches coming into it in Juan Carlos Amaros, formerly at Houston. They have Christy Mewis in her second year. Victoria Pickett is also there from Kansas City in the midfield. And now they add someone like Yasmine Ryan. This is a Gotham side that's looking to get better. They're looking to improve upon their season last year, which is not that hard to do. They didn't have a great season, but getting Yasmine Ryan is like 4 steps up for Gotham. A huge get. I'm excited to see Yasmine Ryan play alongside someone like Christy Mewis, right? Play alongside someone in that midfield that is on the international level and can contribute. And it's also a Gotham side where Ryan can probably have a bit more of an impact than she did at Gotham. And we saw the impact that she had there, being able to contribute in goal scoring opportunities, send crosses in, her defensive efforts. Ryan's a player that plays both sides of the ball incredibly well, and Gotham is lucky to have her.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Listen, like I said, we're watching all this unfold and in front of us, and again, clubs making their announcements are pretty good indicators of that things have sort of aligned in the way that they're hoping that they would initially align. Angel City within their release, also specifically mentioning the conditions, saying that Ryan and the allocation money was sent to Gotham in exchange for the number 1 pick, pending conditions met, and Gotham obviously welcoming uh, Yasmine Ryan to the fold for 2023. So it's something that we'll obviously keep an eye on moving forward. Because there are still going to be implications, from the trade and how we're going to see. We're still not really going to fully know how to perhaps rate the types of trades until things kind of pan out a little bit. Like we've chatted a little bit about all that allocation money that Orlando has received. What are their plans for that? And now how do they plan to tackle their draft? Now looking at the number 3 pick, and how does Gotham plan to navigate their draft now that they've got a very, very good player in Yasmine Ryan, and now the number 2 pick versus the number 1 pick? And will we hear Alyssa Thompson's name called for Angel City while in
Will
Philly?
she
I don't know.
register for the draft?
We'll see. We're gonna be there, so we'll definitely have a front row seat to all the action. I love this stuff.